Her neck and chest had been torn apart, her skin was almost as white as snow, and the blood on her clothes and skin had long since dried. It was clear that she had been dead for a while. The man holding her was on his knees, the sounds from his mouth near inaudible as he mourned. It was then when a woman came to his side, before she placed her hands over her mouth, and too fell to her knees and began sobbing. A spark went off in Rylan's brain when he suddenly recognized the two of them. They were Alden and Maywin Emmon, the jewelers. The two continued to sit there, sobbing their eyes out at what could only be their daughter, before 3 members of the local guard showed up. They barged their way through the crowd until they got to the couple. One of the guards, who looked to be in charge, knelt down on one knee and placed his hand on Alden's shoulder. "When?" he asked. "Where did you find her?" A moment passed as Alden attempted to collect himself. "This morning, near the edge of the forest. Oh, God, how we prayed for it to just be lost. I couldn't have imagined." His words became unintelligible as he fell back into an uncontrollable sobbing. "No," Rylan thought. "No, this can't be. I need to leave now." He turned his gaze from the poor girl's desecrated corpse and hastily made his way back to his cart, where Bainan's men had already gotten to work. Rylan then went out of his way to help the men unload the wood, just to speed things up. At first, he was thankful that they weren't curious enough to go and see what caused the crowd to form, but as they lifted the logs of the cart, they soon began asking questions. Rylan told them what he saw, and soon learned what had truly transpired. They told him the Yemen girl had gone missing a week ago, and the parents along with the guard had been looking for her for days. Only now had they found her. The tale didn't make things any less unsettling, so Rylan was hasty the moment the wood was off the cart and the gold was in his hand. As he made his exit off the hamlet, he simply stared at his feet, looking up only to see where he was going. Even without looking, he could feel them, the glares and scowls of the townspeople burning into him. Things were coming together, and not in a way Rylan expected or desired. Before his father died, he used to tell Rylan to just push through things, so he did just that, and kept his mind blank as he left the hamlet. He had never seen a dead body before, let alone one that young. The very image of the girl was burned into his mind for the rest of the day, right up until the moment he went to sleep for the night. The day after that seemed slow, as did the day after that. He once again filled his cart up with wood, but this time ventured a little further into the valley, to find anyone who was willing to buy his wood. He came across a small house or cabin every now and then, some of whom were willing to buy a log or two, but nothing that would help support him in the long run. After a week of this, he travelled further outward, out of Borderskim to the nearest hamlets and villages, anywhere willing to buy. To his misfortune, even in the places where the Western Trading Company had a large presence, no one wanted to buy his pine. Rylan and Sawdust travelled far, through night and day, through the wind and rain, but after yet another week of nothing, Rylan gave up, and simply took his inadequate, rain-soaked, near-rotting pine back to his home. He disposed of the wood once he had situated Sawdust back in her stable, taking note of how small her supply of food was. "This is just going to have to do, you girl," he said, stroking her neck as she ate her hay. "Something will come up, I promise." He smiled. "You've been so good these past few weeks." With a final pat to Sawdust's neck, he left the stable and went back into his house. His coin was running out and his supplies were critically low. If he wanted to survive the next month, he was going to need to make sacrifices. He went down into his cellar, which he had only built to store things he had brought over from the east, years ago after his mother died. The only major thing of note in his cellar was a chest that nestled in the corner away from the stairs. Walking over, he opened the chest and reached inside, taking out a dusty sheathed sword. Pulling it from its sheath, he looked upon the blade. It hadn't dulled, chipped, or broken since the day it was forged. Rylan swore it was shinier than any of the swords he saw the guards of Borderskim carry, and it made sense. It was his father's sword, the very one he took to war with him, one that was specially forged by a royal blacksmith as a gift. "This is probably worth a few bob," thought Rylan. "But should I?" He stared at the sword for another moment or two before sheathing it. No. He placed the sword back in the chest. "It means too much. Besides, it's too early." He went back upstairs and closed the cellar door. But his pride could only last so long, as after yet another week of no work or coin, he could no longer live on what he had left. The chest was once again opened, and the sword was removed. "You wouldn't want me to die, would you, Dad?" he thought as he attached the sword to his belt. "Oh, gods, forgive me." This time he saddled Sawdust up and made his way down his mountain once again, towards Borderskim. But as he approached the gates, they were closed, and in front of them stood the 2 guards that were usually either side. Rylan pulled on Sawdust's reins as the 2 of them came closer. "Good morning, gentlemen," he said, wary of the stone-like expressions on their faces. "I need entrance to the hamlet. Is something wrong?"
"Gates have been shut since the girl's murder," said the guard on the right. "No one in without the guild's say-so."
"All right, well, may I come in? I have something to trade."
"No,"
said the guard on the left.
"your trading days in Borderskim are done."
A pit dropped in Rylan's stomach.
"What?" "I suggest you leave."
"But I need to get in there. I'm running out of coin, of food. If I don't load up on supplies soon, I'll die."
"Then you should have thought of that before—"
the right guard began before composing himself. "Before what?" Rylan demanded, receiving only awkward stares. He kept Sawdust still, glaring forward at the two guards, trying to fathom why this was happening, until he noticed their hands subtly floating towards their swords. It was then when he decided that perhaps he had lingered long enough. He turned Sawdust around and made his way back up the mountain, again empty-handed. Once atop his mountain, he put his overworked steed away and went into his house, where he simply sat by an unlit hearth, letting it all sink in. "What the hell?" he thought. How in just 1 month have the gods just abandoned me? What did I do? He felt no desire, no need, no inclination to go back outside to chop wood. There was nothing more pointless in the world to him in that very moment. As the rest of the day continued, Ryland barely moved from his spot, using what strength he had left to fight back tears. "They think I did it, that I killed..." His head fell into his hands as he tightly gripped the sides of his face, waiting for the sun to set, for when the world deemed it fit for him to sleep, when he could escape this reality. When darkness finally came, he lit up the hearth and made a stew from the scraps of some old meat he had lying around. But, as he ate his supper, as the only sound that filled his house was the gentle crackling of the hearth, he heard it. The same dreadful howl. The sound alone froze him, his spoon halfway to his mouth. A moment passed, a long, agonizing moment, before he heard it again. He dropped his spoon. That sounded a lot closer than the last one, he thought.